Imagine standing in a crowded room and realizing that almost everyone around you is looking up. For most people, height is simply a number, a measurement written on a medical chart, a detail mentioned when someone asks, "How tall are you?" But for Macci Corinne, height has always been much more than a number. At approximately 6 feet 10 inches tall, Macci is a woman whose extraordinary proportions have made her famous around the world. But the most remarkable part of her height is not simply how tall she is. It is her legs. Her legs measure more than 4 feet 4 inches each. Her left leg measures approximately 157 centimeters, or 53.2 full 5 inches. Her right leg measures approximately 134.3 meters, or 52.874 inches. That means each of her legs is longer than many people are tall. And when Macci Corinne was officially recognized for having the longest legs on a female, she became one of the most unusual record holders in the world. But behind the numbers is a story that is far more interesting than a measurement. It is a story about growing up different, a story about being stared at in public, a story about struggling to find clothes that fit, a story about discovering that the feature she once felt uncomfortable about could become the very thing that made her extraordinary. And most importantly, it is a story about learning to embrace the part of yourself that makes you different. This is the story of Macci Corinne. Macci was born in the United States and grew up in the Austin area of Texas. Her family was already relatively tall. Her father was around 6 feet 5 inches tall, while her brother was also well above average height. But even in a family with tall members, Macci stood out from an early age. It became obvious that she was growing faster and taller than the children around her. As a young child, she was often noticeably taller than her classmates. While other children were still growing gradually, Macci seemed to keep reaching higher and higher. At one point in her childhood, she was already around the height that many adults never reach. Her growth became impossible to ignore. People noticed her everywhere she went. At school, she was taller than almost everyone around her. In public places, strangers sometimes looked at her because her height immediately made her stand out. And when you are a child, being different is not always easy. Children can be cruel when they discover something unusual about someone else. For Macci, her height became an easy target. She has spoken about being taller than others from a very young age. In elementary school, people sometimes assumed she was much older than she really was. Imagine being a child and constantly being asked whether you are in middle school when you are still in elementary school. Imagine entering a room and immediately becoming the tallest person there. Imagine having people stare at you before they even know your name. For a long time, Macci did not see her height as a gift. She saw it as the thing that made her different. And being different can be difficult when you are young. But as Macci grew older, something began to change. She started to realize that her height was not something she could hide. She could not make herself shorter. She could not simply blend into a crowd. She could not walk into a clothing store and expect every pair of pants to fit perfectly. Her body was different, and eventually she had to make a choice. She could spend her life wishing she were different, or she could accept the fact that being different was part of who she was. That change in attitude became one of the most important moments in her life. Macci later explained that during her teenage years, she reached a point where she stopped caring too much about what other people thought of her. And when she stopped allowing other people's opinions to control how she felt about herself, their reactions became less powerful. That is an important lesson, because sometimes the biggest change in a person's life does not happen when their body changes. It happens when their mindset changes. For Macci, that change would eventually lead to something completely unexpected, a world record. The discovery of Macci's extraordinary leg length began with something surprisingly ordinary: clothing. Finding clothes that fit can be difficult for anyone. But for someone with legs that measure more than 4 feet 4 inches, finding standard length pants can become almost impossible. In 2018, Macci was unable to find leggings that fit her properly. Someone eventually offered to create a custom pair for her. That simple moment made Macci think about her legs in a completely different way. She began researching how long her legs actually were. And then she discovered something incredible. There was an official record category for the longest legs on a female. Macci began to wonder whether she might actually be a candidate. The idea sounded almost unbelievable. Could her legs really be the longest in the world? The only way to find out was to measure them properly. When the official measurements were taken, the results were extraordinary. Her left leg measured approximately 135.267 centimeters. Her right leg measured approximately 134.3 centimeters. In inches, that is approximately 53.255 inches for the left leg and 52.874 inches for the right. More than 52 inches, more than 4 feet 4 inches. Each leg was longer than many people in the world. And when the measurements were officially confirmed, Macci Corin became a record holder. But there was another extraordinary fact. Macci was not only recognized for having the longest legs on a female as a teenager, she also held the record for the longest legs on a teenager. At approximately 6 feet 10 inches tall, her legs make up around 60% of her total height. That proportion is extraordinary. For most people, the body is divided into proportions that look familiar. But Macci's legs create an appearance that immediately catches attention. She is tall because her legs are exceptionally long, and that has made her one of the most recognizable record holders in the world. But a record is only a number. The real story is what life is like behind that number. For Macci, having extremely long legs comes with some obvious advantages. One advantage is athletic ability. When she played volleyball during high school, her height and long legs gave her a natural advantage. A taller athlete can often reach higher, cover more ground, and create a larger physical presence on the court. For Macci, her height was not simply something that made her stand out. It could also be useful. But everyday life presents a completely different challenge. Doorways. Many standard doorways are designed for people of average height. For someone standing nearly 7 feet tall, a doorway can become something that requires attention. Macci has spoken about having to duck under certain doorways. A normal activity that most people complete without thinking can become a daily reminder that the world is not always designed for someone with her height. Cars can also be difficult. The space inside a vehicle is designed around average body proportions. Long legs can make getting into smaller cars uncomfortable. Finding a comfortable seating position can be difficult. And even simple tasks such as sitting in a normal chair can feel different when your legs are significantly longer than average. Then there is clothing. This may be one of the most frustrating challenges. Standard clothing sizes are designed for standard body measurements. But Macci's legs are far outside the measurements used by most clothing companies. Finding jeans that are long enough is difficult. Finding jeans that are long enough and also fit properly around the waist and hips is even more difficult. Custom-made clothing can solve the problem, but custom clothing is expensive. For Macci, a pair of jeans that fits correctly can cost hundreds of dollars. This means that something most people take for granted, walking into a store and buying a pair of pants, can become a major challenge. But perhaps the most difficult part of being so different is not the physical inconvenience. It is the attention. When Macci entered a public place, people notice, some people stare, some people ask questions, some people take photographs. And on the internet, the reactions can be even more extreme. Social media gave Macci a platform to share her life with millions of people. But the internet is a place where positive and negative reactions often appear side by side. Many people are fascinated by her height. Others make rude comments. Some people compare her appearance to fictional characters. For someone who has already spent much of her life being noticed because of her height, this kind of attention can be difficult. But Macci has learned not to allow every comment to define her. She has also used her platform to encourage other people to feel more confident about the features that make them different. And this may be the most important part of her story. Macci did not pursue the record simply because she wanted to be famous. She wanted to inspire tall women around the world. She wanted people who felt uncomfortable about their height to understand that being different does not automatically mean being less beautiful, less capable, or less valuable. In fact, the thing that makes someone different may eventually become the thing that makes them unforgettable. Macci's story is a powerful example of how perspective can change. When she was younger, being taller than everyone else was something that made her uncomfortable. Later, the same height became the reason people around the world learned her name. The same legs that attracted unwanted attention became world record legs. The same body that once made her feel different became a source of confidence. And the same feature she once wished she could hide became something she chose to embrace. But it is important to understand that being a record holder does not mean life becomes perfect. Macci still has everyday problems. She still has to find clothing. She still has to deal with doorways. She still receives unwanted attention. She still experiences the challenges that come with being physically different. A world record does not remove those challenges. What changes is the way a person chooses to face them. And Macci has chosen to face them publicly. She has used social media to show people what life is like from her perspective. Sometimes her videos focus on her extraordinary height. Sometimes they show the practical challenges of finding clothing or moving through everyday spaces. And sometimes they simply show that behind a world record is an ordinary person living an extraordinary life. That is something many people forget. When they see a record holder, they see the number, they see the unusual feature, they see the headline. But they do not always think about the person. Macci is not simply a pair of record-breaking legs. She is a person who grew up feeling different, a person who experienced unwanted attention, a person who had to learn confidence, a person who discovered that the thing she once wanted to hide could become a reason to inspire others. And that is why her story is so powerful, because record itself is fascinating. But the journey behind the record is even more fascinating. When Macci's record was confirmed, her measurements immediately attracted worldwide attention. People were amazed by the numbers. A leg measuring more than 53 inches is difficult for many people to imagine. But numbers become easier to understand when we compare them. Imagine placing one of Macci's legs next to an average person. Her leg alone would extend from the ground to a height that many people never reach. That is why photographs of Macci standing beside other people are so striking. The difference is not subtle. Her height creates an immediate visual contrast. And her legs are responsible for much of that extraordinary height. Yet behind all the measurements, there is something important to remember. Human beings are not designed according to a single standard. People come in different shapes, heights, proportions, and appearances. Some people are unusually tall. Some are unusually short. Some have physical abilities that seem impossible. Some have features that make them immediately recognizable. The world is full of natural variation. Macci's body is one example of that variation, and instead of trying to hide it, she decided to embrace it. Her message to tall women is simple but powerful. Do not be ashamed of your height. Do not allow other people's opinions to decide how you feel about yourself. And do not assume that being different means something is wrong with you. For years, Macci experienced the negative side of being different. She was stared at. She was questioned. She was sometimes made fun of. But eventually, she reached a point where she decided that other people's opinions were not going to control her life. That decision changed everything. It allowed her to stand confidently. It allowed her to pursue the record. And it allowed her to use her unusual height to encourage others. There is a lesson in that for everyone. Most people have something about themselves that makes them feel different. It could be their height, their appearance, their voice, their background, their personality, their ability. Sometimes people spend years trying to hide the very thing that makes them unique. Macci's story shows another possibility. Maybe the thing you are trying to hide is not your weakness. Maybe it is simply a part of you that you have not yet learned to accept. Macci Corinne's world record is fascinating because it is so unusual, but her story is inspiring because it is so relatable. Almost everyone knows what it feels like to be judged. Almost everyone knows what it feels like to stand out. Almost everyone has worried about what other people think. The difference is that Macci's experience is impossible to ignore. When you are nearly 7 feet tall, you cannot simply disappear into a crowd. Your difference is visible, and because of that, she had to learn an important lesson earlier than many people do. She had to learn how to live confidently while being noticed. That is not always easy, but she did it. Today, Macci is known around the world for her record-breaking legs. Her left leg measures approximately 135 to 167 centimeters. Her right leg measures approximately 134.3 centimeters. She stands approximately 6 feet 10 inches tall. And her legs account for around 60% of her total height. These measurements are remarkable. But the most remarkable thing may not be the measurements at all. It may be the transformation in the way she sees herself. A girl who once felt uncomfortable about standing out became a woman who openly embraces the very feature that makes her unique. A teenager who was once targeted because she was taller than everyone else became an inspiration for people who feel different. And a simple problem with finding leggings eventually led to a world record. That is the unexpected nature of life. Sometimes the path to something extraordinary begins with something completely ordinary. A pair of leggings, a measurement, a question. Could these be the longest legs in the world? For Macci Corinne, the answer was yes. But her story does not end with the record. In fact, the record may have been only the beginning. The world learned about Macci because of her extraordinary legs. But many people continued following her because of her personality and her message. She showed that being different does not mean you have to apologize for existing. She showed that confidence is not always something a person is born with. Sometimes confidence is something a person develops after years of feeling uncomfortable. Sometimes confidence begins with a decision to stop letting other people control your emotions, a decision to stop hiding, a decision to say, "This is who I am." For Macci, that decision changed her life. And it may have changed the lives of other people as well. Every time a tall woman sees Macci and realizes that extraordinary height does not have to be something embarrassing, her story becomes more meaningful. Every time someone who feels different sees her confidence and feels a little less alone, the record becomes more than a number. That is the true power of an unusual achievement. It can become a message, it can become an example. It can show people that there is no single way to look, live, or exist in the world. Macci Curran is famous for having the longest legs on a female, but her story is ultimately about something much bigger than legs. It is about identity, it is about confidence, it is about accepting yourself. And it is about understanding that the features that make you different can sometimes become the features that make you extraordinary. So the next time you see someone who looks different, remember that you may be seeing only one part of their story. You may see the height, you may see the record, you may see the measurements, but behind every record is a human being. A person with challenges, a person with dreams, a person who has experienced doubt, and a person who has had to learn how to become comfortable in their own body. Macci Curran's legs may be among the longest ever measured on a female. But her greatest achievement may be the way she learned to stand proudly in a world that was not always designed for someone like her. She did not become extraordinary because the world suddenly changed. She became extraordinary because she changed the way she saw herself. And that may be the most important record of all. This is the story of Macci Curran, the woman whose legs are longer than most people are tall, the record holder from Texas. And an example of what can happen when a person stops trying to hide what makes them different. Because sometimes the feature that makes you stand out is the very feature that makes you unforgettable. This is Max Records.